to welcome the dignitaries on the dais, our most valued invited guests, resource persons, volunteers, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to the tutorials of the International Conference on Digital Libraries at Indira Gandhi National Open University, one of the mega universities of the world. This conference is being co-organized by IGNU as part of its year-long Silver Jubilee celebrations. The ICDL 2010 is third in series. The earlier conferences were organized in 2004 and 2006, which gave fillip to the digital library movement in Asia, and a digital library policy report was submitted to the Government of India for digitization of manuscripts and libraries. The theme of ICDL 2010 is Digital Libraries Shaping the Information Paradigm. The conference aims to focus on the strength and potential of the digital libraries, their role in education, cultural and socio-economic development. This conference will provide an international forum to luminaries, researchers, academics, practitioners, policymakers to deliberate upon the issues pertaining to digital libraries. Now, as we all know, the ceremonial lamp symbolizes knowledge. Its flame has two significant qualities. First, it dispels darkness, and second, its upward movement denotes the path to divinity and wisdom. May I call upon our chief guest to inaugurate the tutorials by lighting the lamp, and other dignitaries will join too. Thank you. We extend a hearty welcome to our dignitaries on the dais by presenting them with bouquet of flowers. Ms. Parul will welcome our chief guest, Dr. T. Ramasamy, with bouquet of flowers. We extend a warm welcome to Ms. Anne Caputo with flowers. We extend a warm welcome to Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Executive Director, TERI, with flowers. As it is evident that IGNU is making rapid strides in all the areas of open and distance learning. And this is happening under the dynamic leadership of our Vice Chancellor, Professor V.N. Rajashekharan Pillai. May I request our Vice Chancellor to address and welcome the august gathering.
Good morning and welcome to the 3rd International Conference on Digital Libraries. Dear Dr. T. Ramasamy, Secretary, Department of Science and Technology and Chief Guest of today's function, Ms. Ann Caputo, President, Special Libraries Association and Executive Director of Dow Jones, USA, Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Executive Director of TERI, the co-organizer of this event, Vice Chancellors, distinguished resource personnel from different parts of the world, speakers, experts, my dear colleagues, other distinguished invitees, and members of the printed and electronic media, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me, on behalf of the Indira Gandhi National Open University, extend a warm welcome to all of you who have graced this occasion, which is one of the important events of our year-long Silver Jubilee celebrations as well. I am extremely thankful to the authorities of TERI, the Vice Chancellor, the Executive Director, and the Chairperson of TERI for collaborating with Indira Gandhi National Open University for organizing this very important event. As you know, this is the tutorial session of this international conference, and the formal inauguration today evening for the international conference will be done by Mr. Kapil Sibal, Honorable Minister for HRD, Government of India. Indira Gandhi National Open University has entered into the Silver Jubilee year. On the Silver Jubilee year, this university with 2.8 million student population and as a university which is making use of technology maximum to reach people at all levels, we are proud to host this, co-host this event. I also take this opportunity to congratulate my colleagues, particularly Mr. Sudhir Arora, the university librarian, and the entire team from Indira Gandhi National Open University for working with TERI and the International Organizing Committee and the National Organizing Committee for making all the necessary arrangements for this event. There is no need of emphasizing the importance of a conference of this kind, and you are all experts. You know that the technological advances in the area of storage, representation and retrieval of different types of media have contributed to the growth of digital multimedia libraries in a multitude of perspectives. Digital libraries, by definition, are organizations which provide the digital and intellectual resources to select, to structure, and to offer intellectual access for interpretation, distribution, and preservation of collections of digital works of all sorts. They ensure persistence over time of these digital collections so that they are readily and cost-effectively available for use by specific defined community or set of communities. For the next 3 days, a lot of themes have been selected for this very important event. My duty is to formally welcome all of the dignitaries as well as the entire participants of the tutorial session which is happening in this Indira Gandhi National Open University. Dr. T. Ramasamy, a distinguished scientist, Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology, he has kindly agreed to initiate and inaugurate this particular tutorial session. Dr. Ramasamy, a distinguished chemist, has been promoting, in his capacities, in several capacities, has been promoting technology intervention in all areas, and he's also a friend of Indira Gandhi National Open University. As a scientist, he has collaborated, when he was in the CLRI, when he was heading the CLRI, he has collaborated with Indira Gandhi National Open University for offering very meaningful programs. And in spite of his very busy schedule, I know how busy he is, he has agreed to come over here and inaugurate this particular event. Let me, Dr. T. Ramasamy, welcome you to our midst on this very important occasion. Ms. Anna Caputo, President of the Special Libraries Association, Executive Director of Dow Jones, USA, is here with us. Let me, on behalf of the Indira Gandhi National Open University and on behalf of the organizers of this conference, let me invite you, Madam, for this very important event. Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Executive Director of THEORY, Indira Gandhi National Open University has been interacting with THEORY in different areas, in the area of sustainable development. And this particular conference is also, the entire idea of organizing this conference was from THEORY, and Indira Gandhi National Open University collaborated with THEORY in a very significant way. And let me, on my personal behalf and on behalf of the university, extend you a warm welcome to this important event, madam, and your collaboration in various other areas with Indira Gandhi National Open University is going to make a significant difference in providing knowledge and skills to the society. We welcome you to this important event. I take this opportunity to welcome all the organizing committee members, national and international organizing committee members, resource persons who are giving the tutorials, who are organizing the tutorials today, and also the participants from the various institutions from India and abroad for this activity. I take this opportunity to welcome my colleagues, Vice Chancellors, Registrar, and all the colleagues from the Indira Gandhi National Open University for this event. I also take this opportunity to welcome the personnel from the media for covering this important event. I welcome all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring address. This morning, we are fortunate enough to have amidst us Ms. Anne Capito, President, Special Libraries Association. Ms. Anne is Executive Director of Dow Jones Learning and Information Professional Programs. She is responsible for strategic planning, marketing, and the creation of alliances with and for information professionals. She is an adjunct faculty at University of Maryland, College of Library and Information Services. She is also a member of Distance Education faculty at School of Information Sciences, University of Tennessee. May I call upon our guest of honor, Ms. Anne, to address the gathering with her encouraging words.
Good morning. I'd like to recognize Devil Carr, a fellow of TERI, Mr. Sudhir Arora, librarian at IGNOU, Mr. P.K. Bhattacharya from TERI, Mr. Santana Ganguly from TERI, and Ms. Deepa from TERI, and all other TERI librarians and information professionals from the Indira Gandhi Open University. I bring you greetings from the Special Libraries Association, and particularly Janice LaChance, who is our Chief Executive Officer, from the SLA Board and the SLA staff. On behalf of our colleagues in about 75 countries around the world, I am pleased that we can all come together for this important international conference. We have 3 very full days planned ahead, and we must learn and have much to learn from each other. I am also personally delighted to be here in India for the first time. It is a place of magic and beauty. The American writer Mark Twain from the 19th century wrote, "So far as I am able to judge, nothing has been left undone, either by man or nature, to make India the most extraordinary country the sun visits on his rounds." And I am happy that I am here today to see the sun greet India. It is a rare and special privilege for me. This is also a very exciting time at SLA. We have just completed our 100th anniversary, the centennial of our founding last year. And the theme for this year is creating the future. And digital libraries are indeed part of the future. We are excited about the way that we have participated in a growing global community, and I would particularly like to congratulate the SLA chapter in Asia, most specifically in India. It is the fastest growing or part of SLA. going from about 80 members 4 or 5 years ago to well over 200 members today. It is in the top 10 units within SLA, and I offer you particular congratulations for that. We recognize the importance of digital libraries and digital information and digital librarians, and congratulate you on recognizing this by organizing this conference, which is now world-renowned. Your work is important because your employers need reliable information to support their decisions, now more than ever before. Many people think that the internet makes your job unnecessary, but I know that that is totally wrong. Even the big search engines are capable of finding no more than about 20% of the information on the web, and you are the experts in finding it all and in creating digital libraries that make that possible. I suppose that we are all lucky that the information in libraries is no longer made of paper, but is in digital form. Library collections were once contained within 4 walls, and people who worked in these libraries were isolated. In fact, the founder of SLA, John Cotton Dana, even used the word monastic to describe libraries. 100 years ago, he set out to change that, and what you are doing today and in the next 3 days changes that even more. This is still part of SLA's purpose, to gather together professionals from around the world who are expert in these matters. And one of our most important priorities is connecting librarians and information specialists from around the world, not just today face-to-face with each other in digital networks themselves. Today's librarians have a world of tools and resources available to help them locate, assemble, organize, combine, manipulate, and disseminate information, and connecting them with our strategic partners. Within SLA, you have connections, and this conference is about connections as well. We link you to your fellow information professionals from all over the world and to the latest tools that help them do their jobs, and with this conference as well. I wish each of you a rewarding and productive experience in this conference, and I look forward to meeting many of you in the days ahead and to exchanging ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your educative and informative address. We have amidst us as our chief guest, Dr. T. Ramasamy. Dr. T. Ramasamy, currently Secretary to the Government of India, Department of Science and Technology, holds a master's degree in leather technology from University of Madras and PhD in chemistry from University of Leeds, UK. Presently, his work involves developing new policies and models for enhancing the role of public-funded institutions in innovations and research and development. Sir has vast research experience in basic and applied sciences. His contribution in the field of leather science is well recognized at national and international levels. He has been awarded Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize for Chemical Sciences in 1993 and Padma Shri in 2001. I now request our chief guest to address the gathering with his encouraging words.
Very good morning. My esteemed friend and chemist colleague, Professor Rajashekaran Pillai, the guest of honor, Ms. N.A. Caputo, my colleague, Dr. Vibha Dhawan, my friend and as well colleague, Dr. Sudhir Arora, the University Librarian, distinguished participants and delegates of this International Conference on Digital Library, faculty and staff of this great university, guests, ladies and gentlemen, very, very good morning to all of you. We have assembled here today in this largest open universities in the world, truly to discuss the shaping of the information paradigm under the aegis of this International Conference on Digital Library. Of course, when we talked about the information paradigm, we are still discussing the changes in the manners in which information is collected, gathered, generated, stored, and transacted. The human civilization always dealt with information in contemporary ways for several decades and centuries. The way we designed, the way we developed, the way we delivered information system had undergone considerable changes, and we are now probably looking at a new paradigm. If one were to perhaps trace back the times when Vedas were written, we will recognize they were not written in the first place. It was transferred from generation to generation, essentially through a mode of oral communication. But the knowledge was created ahead of the human ability to write, even the ability to record and store in the form of publications and paper and so on. Perhaps the information was developed before the papers were discovered or the writing materials were discovered. There were one form of, let me say, information which probably led to a higher levels of intellect of humankind. Whenever we talk about traditional knowledge, we recognize that majority of that knowledge was created by society as a whole, not by an individual. So the way we developed information, the way we developed knowledge, was not necessarily linked only to an individual. It was through a societal desire to create knowledge and store. But then, times have changed in this globalized world. The way information is today created, generated, stored, and the manner in which it is transacted is very different relative to maybe even 50 years ago. I remember the time when I had to learn in the school. I have a record of having studied in 21 schools. I mean, you might ask me whether every school got tired of me and got rid of me quite quickly. But every school had a different syllabus, different book, and there was absolute lack of standardization. And the times were then different, and the manners in which libraries were managed are very different. But today's world, we can't afford to do things anymore. We have to find manners in which we transact information better. The much celebrated Vedas were never written for a long time, and it is believed that what we are left with today is less than 1% of what was created in the first place. And that's not a good news. So when we are assembled today to discuss this issue of shaping the information paradigm and in the framework of digital libraries, we are faced with the paradigms relating to policies and practices, the paradigms relating to the infrastructure and the investments required, the kind of content and the coverage, the archival to access, the structure to storage, the preservation to the protection, and of course, above all, enabling the power of mind with the strength of mindset. To me, very often, the power of mind does not translate into strength of mindset. we, as a society, sometimes want to excel as individuals and don't necessarily show the tendency to share. When we discuss this digital library as a concept and as a practice, we recognize that the transition from analog to digital form enables us to transact more widely, more openly, reach a wider cross-section. The question here is, are we prepared for sharing that more openly? And that is related to the kind of policy systems that you have. Oftentimes, if you want to share information more openly, more widely, you do require an infrastructure. Let us take this university itself, the so-called Inauguration Open University as a model is education through an open and distance education, which is completely contraindicated to the Gurukul model, where 5 students will have to associate themselves with one teacher and connect learning to the living system. At best, a fantastic Gurukul model can provide a finite number of students being enabled into better human beings. But that denies access to a large number of people. So when my friend Dr. Rajashekharan Pillai talks about Indira Gandhi Open University being the largest open university system, he's talking about millions of people being connected to this university system. That implies you're looking at a different policy, that we share that information openly with many people and make education more universal. That's a statement of the policy. Should that happen, then the associated practice also changes. There are still people in this country who believe Gurukul was better than the present mode of education system. And that practice has to change in terms of its ground practices in life. The kind of infrastructure that one requires to reach a large number of people is very different. In the olden days when you had this Gurukul model, I guess people were able to communicate with each other adequately with just palm leaves. We can't do that anymore. The kinds of hardware, the kind of software support system that becomes necessary is very large. Of course, the people who worry about the digital libraries in this country often languish saying that there's not adequate policy in the government, there's not adequate infrastructure in the government, there's not investments being provided to us in an effective way. But the truth of the matter is, the digital library, if it is translated into investment per person reached, it's very low. If you look at the, in terms of the per person, per capita investment is very low because it can reach much larger number of people. The kind of content you develop may be similar, but the kind of coverages that you are looking at are very different. And for that coverage component, the kind of digital library sources that become available will be very vastly different from the earlier times. Now, how do we convert some of our archival information to a digital format to get access into the digital library model? When, for example, we created the traditional knowledge digital library for documenting the kinds of available information in either Ayurveda, Siddha, or many other traditional knowledge systems, the digitization process itself as a technology was quite challenging. Now, they are written in different languages, and the languages sometimes can become a barrier if you don't know it. That's the biggest challenge. So the kind of conversions that are necessary become relevant as well. And I believe in the modern world, the power and the strength of digital library and its reach for a larger population base enormous. Therefore, when we discuss this special international conference on digital libraries here, we are truly talking about a technology that enables a very vast section of the society today access to information, and perhaps even provide an opportunity to create new knowledge, new information as well. So the kind of information paradigm that we're discussing in the context of modern world is truly enabled by technology, enabled by necessarily the associated training. Of course, once as a conservativist, I was languishing. I was telling somebody, I asked one of my students, hey, have you read this paper in the journal? He said, that person will say, sir, I downloaded it. I say, when do you upload this? Generally, that information exploration has become really a way of life for many people. But internalization of information is another issue. And therefore, the kinds of workshops of this kind offer new opportunities for some of us. And those opportunities essentially is to share the experience of implementing a digital library, bring about the right mindsets of changing practices. I used to say that some of the librarians are very pleased that the books are better preserved but not used. The question of increasing the use of information would require another mindset. Therefore, the tutorials of the kind that are organized here is essentially to prepare that mindset, prepare that technology to reach larger number of people. I am very pleased that this wonderful conference here is organized in this open learning framework. The culture of spreading education through an open source model is truly laudable. Let me hope that this International Conference on Digital Libraries that are focused today on the shaping of the information paradigm will perhaps provide a new set of tools for us. And I understand that the tutorial sessions are tight-packed and you have a very hectic schedule. Let me wish the conference and participants in this workshop very well. Let me hope that conferences of this kind will give us a completely different set of learning tools and a mindset to learn differently. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for underlining the crucial issues related to digital library movement in India. As you are aware that IGNOU is co-organizing this ICDL 2010 with TERI. Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Executive Director, TERI, is here to grace the occasion. She did PhD in botany from University of Delhi in 1985. She is actively involved in tree tissue culture and has set up a modern tissue laboratory at TERI. She has many publications to her credit and has won many awards and honors. May I request Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Executive Director, TERI, to say a few words on the occasion.
Thank you very much for introducing me. Dr. Ramasamy, Dr. Rajshekharan Pillai, and Sudhir. Well, and all the participants for this important meeting. After the interesting talks, I suppose there is hardly anything left for me because they have introduced the topic so well and taken us through a journey of how the science of libraries were a few years back and what it is today. But what I thought that I should really go more by my own experience, that what are the kind of changes we are finding in ourselves and the way we are accessing information, and also the students and the role of library, what are we looking forward to them, what are our expectations from them today. We all know that this 21st century is the century of knowledge society. And if we look at the way the knowledge is developing, perhaps it's doubling every 5 years. And that puts enormous pressure on each one of us, and more so on the librarian, that how do they ensure that their fellow colleagues and students have access to the latest of the knowledge. And that is the way, and that is what, responding to that need of the society, the entire system is changing today. The other fact is that today we are living in a global village, and that essentially means that the development in one particular area or region of the world is definitely going to have impact on the other areas. And even for whatever you produce, whatever your knowledge base is based on which you are going for production, that you are not really in isolation. You have to compete in the international world. And not just international world, for your own domestic sales also, because if it's cheaper to import, why not? No one is that bothered about whether it is produced in your country or not, so they will import. They want best of the technology, best of the goods, so that it's best buy for any penny they are spending to invest. And that means that we have to reach each and every citizen, be it the farmer, because if he has to produce food, then he has to produce best, safe food, and which is at globally competitive prices. So that is what the outreach today of the knowledge is. It has to go to every section of the society. And then who is actually giving knowledge to the farmer, that is the scientist. So there again, what kind of research inputs are they getting? I'll go back to my own days when I was a student and the way we struggled hard to get information. I still remember, of course, Delhi University, it has quite a good library, I should put it this way. Xerox machines were introduced around that time, and that essentially means that we will go to the library, we will read the paper, if that is something, or we'll make notes out of it, and if it is something very good, or you don't, you actually want that paper to be read again and again, then you take the effort, get it issued, go and get it Xeroxed. But most of the time it was reading carefully and making notes out of it. And then we'll come back, or otherwise we are sharing with our friends that this paper is very interesting, and therefore there used to be a culture of having weekly seminars as well, where we used to discuss what is new in literature. Now, for any library, it is really not possible to have access to each and every journal. Sometimes you do get back issues, sometimes even those which are subscribed back issues are either available or not available. So it used to be an effort. And looking at that lacuna, in fact, in 1984, we published a bibliography on plant tissue culture, which was published by Elsevier. And we brought the second updated version in 1999. And it was such a task, like we were sitting in the libraries, and all the libraries of India, we practically visited them, and then copied and classified and so on. So it was such a task. And now moving to another area of research, which is on algal biofuel, it was perhaps 2 months sitting on the computer and getting abstract, which also had tons of information, and you actually require them all the time. So there again, digital libraries are going to play a very important role. Needless to say, space is always a constraint, and therefore, what should be the size of the library? You can't have a library which is as big as the university itself, so you can't do that. So digitalization is the only answer if you want to have all the knowledge shared, all the knowledge available for the fellow colleagues. So that is extremely important. Of course, I'll also like to flag one issue, and I don't know, I personally feel we don't have an answer to it, and that is that perhaps to some extent, because even today when you type the keyword and so on, you only source the information that you require. So you develop some sort of blinkers around you, and you are not looking at what other things are available. So one has to be a bit cautious about it, that how do you ensure, and I'm finding it more and more with our students today, that they are just becoming computer savvy. They'll get information that you require in no time, but then they don't put brains into it. And it's more of that we can assess it any time, and therefore they are somewhere forgetting the habit of reading seriously. So that is something which I thought I should flag it over here. Now, most important thing, and I suppose this particular conference is largely to address those issues, is that to use this particular instrument, we need proper training, because and it's a new paradigm, and therefore most of us in our age group or others, they are not trained in terms of like what to assess, what accessibility in terms of open source, how to source that information versus the paid one. What are going to be copyright issues? You get access for your students, and you actually want them to use only on campus, but then it is that you are paying for a fixed number of students, but you don't want them to be sharing it further and make the journal suffer for it, because then once it's out of your domain, then it is practically going everywhere. So what kind of IT structure should be there to support so that it is in the right hands? What are the kind of search systems that should be used? How the information should be stored, what should be stored, because what is important today may not be that important 20 years down the line, and therefore there should be a mechanism that you keep on reading out the information after a fixed interval of time, and so on. Lastly, I would like to thank IGNU and all the leading organizations. They are providing help to TERI from time to time. TERI as an organization that has deep interest in information generation, dissemination, and documentation, basically to spread the knowledge. I'm sure not many of you are aware that before TERI established itself as a research institute, we had a unit in Mumbai for documentation and dissemination, and we had very good or leading center for disseminating information on energy and environment. And we would actually like to continue that tradition and take a lead in at least South Asia, if not the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for highlighting the strength and potential of digital technologies and providing a roadmap for us. Now I call upon our Vice Chancellor to present a memento to our chief guest as a mark of respect. May I call upon Shri Sudhir Kumar Arora ji to present a memento to Ms. Ann as a mark of respect. Now I request my colleague Dr. Seema to present a memento to Dr. Vibha Dhawan. May I request Shri Sudhir Kumar Arora ji, University Librarian, to deliver a vote of thanks.
respected Chief Guest, Dr. T. Ramaswamy, Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Guest of Honor, Madam N.A.S. Capote, President, Special Library Association, Honorable Professor Rajashekharan Pillai, our Vice Chancellor, IGNOU, Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Terry and its friends here, PVCs, Directors of Schools and Divisions, delegates and our dear colleagues from IGNOU and participants. It's my privilege to be called upon to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. This international conference on digital libraries has a lot of relevance and use in today's time. This digital library have tremendous role in education. We look forward its application in ODL system and highly relevant. Digital libraries serve a practical role in sharing expensive resources, physical resources such as books, periodicals, films, videos, softwares, electronic databases, specialized tools such as projectors, graphics, equipments and cameras are shared by community of users. This conference will provide a platform to all the stakeholders willing to interact and exchange their knowledge and experiences. The delegates will find tutorials highly useful, informative and of greater educative value. I, on behalf of IGNOU, the entire organizing team and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all the learned dignitaries on the dais and delegates. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for our chief guest, Dr. T. Ramaswamy, for his valuable time and address, an inspiring address he has given to our audience. I would express our sincere thanks to Madam Anne Capoto for her views on the importance of this digital library. I am also grateful to Mrs. Vibha Dhawan, Terry, for sparing her time and encouragement to digital libraries community by giving her encouragement words. I sincerely express and acknowledge my gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, who has been very supportive and cooperative in our endeavor for co-organizing this conference. Sir, you have always been a source of inspiration and motivation for us. Ladies and gentlemen, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling months before in advance. It requires meticulous planning and a bird's eye for details. I express my deep gratitude for Terry colleagues Debal Sikar and Shantana Ganguly for providing and coordinating for this this co-organization aspects. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of highly motivated and dedicated colleagues of Library and Documentation Division here in IGNOU and Terry both. I owe special gratitude to our PVCs, especially Professor Praveen Sinclair, Professor Srivastsan and others, Registrar Administration, Finance Officer and its staff, and staff of EMPC, Computer Division, Horticulture Cell, Security Wing, and who had toiled hard to ensure that this occasion becomes a grand success. Last but not the least, I would like to thank the members of the media for evincing their interest in covering this eventful conference throughout the year, which eventually will immense benefit the education fraternity at large. I would like to thank sincerely all our resource persons, experts, our honored guests for their presence and participation today. I thank you all for your interest and attention. Thank you.
I request all the dignitaries on the dais, members of the August gathering, my dear colleagues, to assemble outside for tea.
I would like to request all the audience to kindly take the front seats so that there's more interaction between the audience and the tutorial presenters. And interactive systems at the Vienna University of Technology. Dr. Ruber is also president of the Austrian Association for Research in IT and an honorary research fellow in the Department of Humanities, Advanced Technology and Information Institute, University of Glasgow. He received his MSc and PhD in computer science from the Vienna University of Technology. In 1998, Dr. Ruber received the OGI Award of the Austrian Society for Artificial Intelligence and the Corbian Award of the European Research Consortium for Informatics and Mathematics in 2002. He has published numerous papers in refereed journals and international conferences and served as PC member and reviewer for several major journals, conferences and workshops. We now begin the tutorial. I would request all the audience to please take the front seats also, and those at the back. There are some seats vacant at the front. I request Dr. Ruber to take the mic.
Thank you very much for the introduction and a warm welcome from our side. It's a real pleasure to be here and spend hopefully an exciting day with you working on digital preservation. We're very, very happy that the audience that showed up for this tutorial is much larger than we expected. So this is really exciting for us. On the other hand, it will also it's always a danger with a large audience that interactivity is somewhat limited. So we want this tutorial to be as interactive as possible, and actually one goal was to have all of you sitting up here so that we could work on some of the tasks together, which will probably be a bit difficult. But it would be really great if you moved as much to the front as possible, and I'll probably be walking down to you every now and then, so that we can actually discuss things and make this really an interactive tutorial rather than a full day frontal presentation where I'll have a sour throat in the evening and you will be dead just of listening to me talking. So I promise I won't be dangerous. I won't do any harm to anybody sitting in the front row. I'm an absolutely harmless person, and Christoph as well, so there's no need to be afraid. We won't ask any nasty questions to people in the first row. We might ask nasty questions to the people in the last row, though. I mean, that's what I do back at the university, and that usually works out, so that moves people forward. Okay. While we are still working on some of the technical issues to set up the live demo, I probably want to give you a short overview of what we want to do, and actually, before doing so, start with briefly telling you where we are coming from. So both of us are from the Department of Software Technology and Interactive Systems at the Vienna Technical University, computer science faculty. And we've been working for 10, 20 years in the fields of digital libraries, originally mostly focusing on information retrieval, searching for information, organizing information. And it was about 10, 15 years ago that we started working on a different problem that's brought by information, namely digital preservation. And we by now have basically the largest team in my lab is working on issues related to digital preservation. And this is also why we'll be showing you in this tutorial an overview of the problems, the challenges, but also some ways towards solution to this issue. We're involved in a number of research projects, applied, both fundamental theoretical research as well as mostly applied research in the field of digital preservation, addressing topics such as web archiving, which basically means that you're trying to capture as much as what is out there in the open web and store it for posteriority. And here we deal with questions both concerning the collection of the data, the management of such massive amounts of data, but also on the other side with the privacy issues that are involved once you start collecting historical web pages. What effects might that have on the generation that is now growing up and putting a lot of information on the web? And taking a look at what effect might that have on society. Then there's a number of research projects, mostly funded by the European Union, where we are dealing with the more fundamental aspects of keeping digital objects accessible. And it's that part of our work that I'll be mostly focusing on today. So, what is the goal of today's tutorial? I don't know about your individual backgrounds and in how far you've been already confronted with the problems of digital preservation. So some of you may well be aware of the problem. Some of you might have been working on solutions within their own institutions for quite some time, whereas others might be new to the challenges in digital preservation. This is where we'll start also with a brief introduction to what the problems actually are. So we hope that by the end of today, you'll first of all know what the real challenges are, where they are and how we can address them. You'll be able to address them on two layers, which we'll be talking about in more detail a bit later on, namely the actual storage part, but mostly on the logical part, being able to interpret the information that we want to preserve. And you will know why we need to solidly plan for that, why we can't just go out, store data, then copy it again, and hope that we'll be able to use it later on, but why we need a solid plan. And we will be touching a little bit also on audit and certification procedures in order to ensure that you have a trustworthy repository. And the core part of all of that will then be, I'd say, relatively simple workflow, a kind of step-by-step guide on how to address the challenges and the problems. So basically we will show you how you go from, I've got this terabyte of digital objects here, virtually, they're easy to lift up. I want to preserve them for the next 50, 70 years. They may be e-government records, there may be health records, there may be digital documents, maybe electronic theses, maybe your family photographs. I want to preserve them. What do I need to do to make sure that I can show them to an audience 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road? I won't be showing it myself then, but somebody else will hopefully be able to show it. And what we also will take a look at is why this is not a, first of all, one-stop solution, why it's a continuous process, but also why there is not a single solution that we can tell everybody to use, because we will take a look in how far the solutions differ, obviously for each type of object, but also for each type of institution. It does make a difference whether you want to keep the same documents as a library or as an archive. And it also makes a difference for whom you are preserving and keeping them. So we will show you a procedure that allows you to come up with a, and I put that in quotes, optimal solution that's really targeted towards your institution, towards the objects that you have, and towards the customers that you are serving. Okay? So this is the schedule for today. We'll start with about a 1 hour, 1.5 hour introduction to what digital preservation actually is. Now I know that many of you will be familiar with a lot of the aspects I'll be covering there. I guess it will still be helpful to get a kind of common understanding of the problem domain and also of the terminology that's being used here. So we'll take a look at what is digital preservation. We'll then very, very briefly talk about the OAIS model, a famous ISO standard as a reference model for digital preservation systems, although I promise I won't be going into any detail there because it's kind of not the most thrilling topic to talk about. And then we'll move into preservation planning. So I'll briefly introduce the workflow that will be then the focus for the rest of the day. And then just before the lunch break, we'll probably have about half an hour to start with that workflow, setting the scene. We'll pick an example scenario that we will then walk through for the rest of the day to develop a preservation plan. And so the goal is, by the end of this afternoon, that we will have a preservation plan in hand for that sample scenario that we picked. Again, usually we are having those focus tutorials for much smaller groups, like 15, 20, 25 people in a kind of workshop setting. This audience is much larger, but I hope we will gain as much interactivity also for your own benefits as possible. And thus, may I ask also the people in the back to move forward as much as possible. There's lots of seats free in the front rows, and it's not any more dangerous in the front rows than in the back rows. And also please, if you have any question, anytime during the talk, please just raise your hand, or even when I don't see your hand, please just shout out the questions, interrupt me. Also, I have a very bad habit. Well, I have many bad habits, but one that's particularly bad when it comes to speaking is that I start very fast and then I speed up. So if I get too fast, slow me down a little bit. That's, wave and don't throw tomatoes, but make me slow down in any other way. Okay. So much for a few introductory words. Let's dive into it. What is digital preservation? When we get called in by different institutions, libraries, archives, to consult them on setting up digital preservation projects, this is usually the question that we get. Most of you will be familiar with many of the data carriers that are out there. A few of them we know only from museums or from the attic or the never cleaned up rack in the server room. So what we are faced with, and which is one of the challenges in digital preservation, is the actual storage of the data. We have digital objects, they are on some storage carrier, and we want to keep them. Now we all know that any of these carriers has only a very, very limited lifetime. Some of a few years, some of probably decades, but none of them last forever. So we need to make sure that we keep the physical bits intact by actually copying them to new data carriers.
The question is that if you can move around the layers, it will be easy for them to take the video, because here it is.
I'm being videotaped. Hey! Okay. Then it's probably better if I keep moving, because that keeps me on the safe side. Yeah. I know there's a lot of digitization projects going on, and taking a video is digitizing me. So I should stay in the light and move in the light. Well, I'll try to remember that. May the sun shine on me. We had sunshine being mentioned in India this morning, so trying to enjoy this one in here. Okay. Talking about the data carriers and the storage. So we know that the data carriers have only a limited lifetime. But even with some of the most advanced data carriers like magnetic tapes, we know that if you take care of them properly, they last for very long time periods. It's actually the devices that you need for reading them that become obsolete and that are no longer available. So there's a number of computing centers that have tapes lying around, which by themselves would still be perfectly fine for reading data, but you don't have any place to put them to read them. Or even if you have the machine, it comes with a cable, and if you try to plug that cable into any of the modern computers, you'll find out that the number of pins doesn't match, or whatever other. So you can't connect them. And this is one of the core challenges in digital preservation, namely making sure that the bits survive. This is a massive challenge, but on the other hand, this is not an entirely new challenge. This is something where a lot of experience exists. Data centers, computing centers are used to migrating data from one generation of systems to the other. It is usually a significant challenge in terms of volume, when you have thousands of disks to take care of, to copy, to migrate, hundreds and thousands of tapes to migrate to newer storage systems. This is a significant challenge, but it's one where we know how to proceed, where we usually have quite some routine on dealing with them. So for the better part of today's talk, I will not focus on this level of digital preservation. Now let's take a look at the next level. What is this? All of you knew the pictures that were up there on the previous slides. What is this one? Now I'm very well aware that the people in the back row will not be able to read anything. I guess the ones in the front row will be able to read much more either, and even I can't read a lot from up here. And that's not the matter. This is what you will get if you do everything that I've been talking about so far in the previous step. So if you keep copying your digital objects, your files, from one generation of storage media to the other, so from the old floppy disks to newer floppy disks, to CDs, DVDs, to tapes, to hard drives. If you do all of that, this is what you'll get 20 years down the road. What you see here is an earlier version of the PowerPoint slides that I'm just showing to you. And you can either take a look at them in ASCII code, in binary code, or in hexadecimal code, or any other encoding scheme that you may want to choose. This is how the data is stored on a data carrier. Zeros and ones, basically. This is what digital information is all about. Now, the fact that this is a PowerPoint presentation is something that you'll have a hard time finding out, taking a look at the zeros and ones, and finding out which slide that is and what the text on that slide is, I claim, next to impossible for you unless you have some matrix-like superpowers to read through the binary numbers there and digest what might be hidden. And this is the real challenging problem of digital preservation. Because if you keep the data safely stored over generations of storage systems, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, you will have lots of data. You have billions of zeros and billions of ones stored on beautifully massive tape arrays, but you will not know what they are.